So let's just move on quickly and see how we can use a trigger volume with a first person controller and start setting up some behaviors so that we can identify when we are in a trigger volume, and then we can make some actions based on whether we are in that trigger volume or not. I'll create another little script. Just for example, I'm just going to call it player script. Let's work with that trigger volume script first. Let's elaborate on that a little bit more. So we have these events happening on enter, on exit, on stay, and on exit. So let's set up a Boolean variable that will show us if we are in the trigger zone. Is in trigger zone to be a Boolean, and we'll set it, assign it a false. I always do that. So yeah, we have a variable Boolean. So when we enter the trigger, I'm going to set that to true because we're now in the trigger zone. And then also, while we're staying within the trigger zone, we're still in the trigger zone. And when we exit, that's when we set it to false. Okay, so save that out. Bring up the trigger volume so we can watch this Boolean toggling as those events happen. Walking towards the volume. Now enter the volume, and you see the Boolean is now ticked to true. I walk out, and it's false. Even if I jump in from the top, it's true. If I jump out, in, true, false. Okay, so that's all well and good. The trigger volume knows that it's being entered or not, but we want to do things on our first person character controller. I'm going to have a script here. Because our first person controller is going to be walking around all over the place. And when we want to pick something up, we want to be able to press the E so that we know that we're in a trigger volume, and we can press the E and collect the item that is there. So let's set that up. Let's attach the player script to that. I'm going to name it at this point player. You'll see why right now. On the trigger volume, we want the trigger volume to tell the player script if it's in a trigger or not. Set up a couple of variables for that. There. Let's just typecast it to the script. And let's just talk to the script on the player. Get rid of that. So what do we want to do? When we start, we want to find this script, don't we? So remembering all the stuff from my game object find and get component videos. So the player object, you type game object equals game object dot find. We're finding an object by its name as a string. That's why I set it to player, because it's much quicker to type. Okay, we want to check if we have already dropped it in the inspector first. So let's check if there is no player. If there is no player, then we're going to do all this stuff. Otherwise, we've already assigned our player script in the inspector, so we don't need to do all this. Okay, so our player will equal our player object dot get component, and we've got a typecast here as a player script, so that's all we want. Our player script. Okay, so let's see that in action. So we have nothing in our player. If I hit play, now we have a reference to our player script, so we can start talking to it. So let's work with that player script now. Just like I set a boolean up on the trigger volume in trigger zone, let's put that on the player script. So now we have a boolean to store that we can access directly from the player script if we're in a trigger zone or not. So while we're setting in trigger zone is here, let's set it on the player script too. The player dot in trigger zone, because I called it exactly the same thing, equals true. And we'll do the same thing for all the other conditions. Oops, when we leave. So now we should be telling the player script, and we should be telling this boolean here what it is. So let's see if that's working. I'll highlight the player now so we can watch the players in trigger zone. Hit play. So we're not in the zone. I walk into the zone and the trigger volume has told the player script, yes, you are in a zone. Leave it, come back, walk away. Great. So now we have our trigger volume letting the player know if it is in a trigger volume or not.